Thank you for being here. Kirsten is an active board member of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. She was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to Spiritist parents and was a part of the Spiritist Society of Philadelphia before moving to Maryland in 2011. She has participated in the Spiritist Medical Congress, and if anybody hasn't checked them out, you should take a look at them. That's a wonderful experience on there. And multiple Spiritist symposiums here in the USA. Professionally, she is a registered nurse, and go nurses. We need people like that. With experience in critical care and case management. Kirsten will present the topic, Experience of Beauty. So thank you, Kirsten, and we appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Just wanted to check the time, whether or not I should say good morning or good afternoon. Before I begin my presentation today, I just wanted to say something interesting happened yesterday. I was texting Susanna and just saying, hello and this, that, and the third, and she happened to tell me via text that, things that were going on in Florida and everything was so overwhelming, and that, probably her lecture was going to be subpar, and I responded some rhetoric to her, but if I had to re-respond, I would probably turn to her and say, is that so? Her lecture is a very hard act to follow, but coincidentally falls very much in line with what we hope to present here today. So the reason why my first slide, it's significant, and why, let me make sure that I know how to navigate this myself, why it's blank there actually is a purpose. It's not because I was running around, didn't have time, or I don't have any artistic skills. It actually is quite the opposite. I want for us to take just a minute and do something for me, all of you, okay? I want you all to sit in a comfortable position, uncross your arms, your legs, take everything off your laps. Because today's lecture, as it was requested by me, will be an experience. Today will be an experience of beauty. Today will not be a lecture of what beauty is, how you should view it, the social constructs of it, the social norms of it, but how one might interpret beauty and how one might experience it from a material but also from a spiritual perspective. Okay. What I want you to do is to close your eyes for a moment, and I want you to take a deep breath in. If you find your shoulders moving up as you take a deep breath in, you're doing it wrong. I want you to feel your belly fill up with air as you inhale, and I want you to exhale and feel your abdomen contract. I want you to do that 2 more times for me. Inhale, feel your belly fill up with air, and exhale. And one last time. I also did that for myself so my nerves would calm down. I want you to open your eyes. And I want you to imagine that today it's going to be a blank slate for you. Today, in our understanding and revisiting the idea of our experience of beauty, beyond what we have been told in the social constructs and the norms of society throughout history. Because ultimately, much like Susanna sort of hinted at this, we live in a world of semantics. We live in a world that dictates to us that this is that and that is this, and you fall into this category and I fall into that category. And life tells us, and society tells us how we should feel. And our culture tells us and dictates to us how we should feel, how we should act. And I had this experience staying with friends of ours here in Georgia, an interesting experience related to beauty, where I, interestingly enough, nothing is by chance. I didn't resist it, Susanna, kind of, maybe depending upon if you were there. I'm looking for where Sylvia is because she might say, no, she's lying. She was actually resisting it. I realized after I had unpacked everything, that the one thing that I thought to some extent was important to me for this lecture was to have my makeup and all of my tools and everything and the extensive, and I had nothing. And I entered into a severe panic. And I'm not over-exaggerating, although my husband might say I'm a little bit of a drama queen, but I entered into a panic. And I ran to Sylvia's bedroom and I said, I have nothing. I don't have my makeup, I don't have my false lashes, I don't have anything with me today for tomorrow's lecture. How can I give a lecture on beauty looking horrendous? So I said, look, I can call an Uber, it's not a problem. I'll find a local Rite Aid, CVS, Walgreens, don't know what they have here in Georgia, but just want to let you know I don't have these things and I need it. It was an interesting experience. Nothing is by chance, and I have found that over the time that the more lectures I give, I have found that I'm not sure if it's the spirits that do that to me, that purposely wanting me to learn something, because I kept saying to myself, I don't have what I need for this lecture. Maybe. But our experience through beauty, personally and collectively, leaves a lasting effect for us for many reasons, because the ways in which we define things. If I can get this to work. So I wanted us to revisit this idea of semantics. And there's a wonderful gentleman by the name of John Koenig, and you can find him on his YouTube channel called the Dictionary of Sorrows. And he publishes amazing, beautiful videos. But what he does is he's a neologalist, if I'm saying that correctly. He creates words. He said in a TED Talk that the reason why he started this is because he was experiencing life and realized that there weren't words to explain what he was feeling. And I thought how interesting and how perfect and appropriate for our lecture today, because how we experience things and that the names that we give things or to things is oftentimes directly correlated to how we experience them. So I wanted to play a short video for you that's surrounding this word sonder that he created. I'm going to walk over here real quick. Oh, and no, I'm not. We can go back to my main slide real quick before we play it. The sonder, as he defines it, is the realization that each passerby has a life as vivid and as complex as your own. This is a very important realization for each one of us, both as spiritists and as human beings and as immortal spirits. To be grateful for our own life, to be self-accepting of ourselves, but also to accept that the person walking beside me, whether they're my partner or my friend or my worker at my Spiritist Center, that they have their own life, their own journey, their own walk. So I found it beautiful and I wanted to share his video with you.
Sonder. You are the main character. The protagonist, the star at the center of your own unfolding story. You're surrounded by your supporting cast, friends and family hanging in your immediate orbit. Scattered a little further out, a network of acquaintances who drift in and out of contact over the years. But there in the background, faint and out of focus, are the extras. The random passers-by, each living a life as vivid and complex as your own. They carry on invisibly around you, bearing the accumulated weight of their own ambitions. Friends, routines, mistakes, worries, triumphs, and inherited craziness. When your life moves on to the next scene, there's flickers in place, wrapped in a cloud of backstory and inside jokes and characters strung together with countless other stories that you'll never be able to see, that you'll never know exists, in which you might appear only once, as an extra sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk.
Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows is his YouTube channel name. He's created it, he edits all his videos. You can shut it off for me, thank you. It's very unique and it's thought-provoking, and it makes us think about the ways in which we label things, the ways in which we understand the world as we see it. Oop, well, I can't move, but that's okay. It's going to be fixed in a second. Thank you. So how do we experience beauty? One of the things we will be going through the lecture today is how we experience it, the neurobiology of it, and also from a spiritual perspective. I will not be talking about what is the right way to experience it, what is the wrong way to experience it, because it is a subjective experience. That means that it is yours and yours alone. Much like Sonder, your experiences in your life are yours and yours alone. Far be it for anybody else to tell you, aside from God and maybe your spirit guide, to tell you how you should be experiencing life or beauty for that matter. And not just beauty when you think of the beauty industry and cosmetics, but the beauty in art and in music and everything that flows in between it. I thought the most wisest quote I would bring for you to start at our lecture is from The Little Prince. And it says that the most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or touched. They are felt with the heart. That will be the backbone of our presentation today, that your heart and your emotion is the best way for you to experience beauty, not looking at yourself, denying yourself certain emotions, but allowing things to flow and learning from them, growing with them. Suffering and mistakes are all a part of our existence. So the less we resist, the more things flow. And throughout history, we're going to see beauty defined to us in different ways, in different eras, and different depictions. Depending as far back as the early 1400s, the art reflects a lot of what was going on at the time. This is referred to as the Comedy of Apelles, and this was done by an Italian artist based on a previous description of another artwork that was done, and this is held in Florence. So you see how art is depicted here. And even going back to the Victorian age, a little interesting side note in doing a lot of research in regards to art, although this, I do not believe this is Henry VIII, many women and many men in our culture, people believe that, you see women using high heels, and we always think women have always worn high heels, but actually, a matter of fact, history tells us that men were one of the first users of high heels, or some version of it, as you can see here. And some historians actually say that Henry VIII had created this law that he alone could wear the highest heel in the land, and every other man had to wear something smaller than him. So when we think about, this is feminine, that's masculine, well, history has dictated the social constructs of what that means for us, just as a sidebar. But this was art. Largely, people who had money had these big, large canvases of themselves, showing off what to them was beauty. Then we have this. There was a whole era in history where voluptuous women were honored. They were revered. But this wasn't done a century ago. It's actually done within the last 30 years or so, a little bit more, 40 years. Can you guess how much this painting was? 10, 20, 30, $40? Any guess? If you were to look at this painting and give it a numeric value, what would you say it was worth? 5 million? Okay, you can't answer because you live in New York, so you can't answer. Anyone else? No idea? Just throw a number out there for me. 100K. This painting, which was painted by Lucian Freud, a British painter, it was dubbed Big Sue or Benefit Supervisor Sleeping Painting, was sold for over $33 million to a wealthy Russian man, an art connoisseur. Maybe. It's art. To someone, obviously, it was worth $33 million. But this is the experience of beauty. For some, it's one thing. For others, it means something else. And for different cultures, it can mean something entirely foreign and almost scary to us. But this is beauty. In this particular tribe in Africa, in order to attract a husband, the women elongate their bottom lip. This is something that is so ingrained in their culture, it's normal. Not just this African tribe, but actually many other tribes, indigenous people, use this similar tactic to elongate the neck. We think that these things are so obscure or so crazy because we are the ones looking, we are outside looking in. Pop culture, and if you have a teenager, I guarantee you they know the very name of who this person is because she's very popular on YouTube. We begin to redefine what it is to be beautiful, what it means to be feminine, what it means to be acceptable in society. This image showing what it looks like to have no makeup on versus the awesomeness of makeup afterwards. Not asking you to say whether it's right or it's wrong, but to allow yourself to experience what you're feeling in this moment. These are just photographs of women who perform art. To them, their experience of beauty is art. But oftentimes, again, the social constructs might tell us otherwise. In recent years, in pop culture and beyond, with the LGBTQI community coming forward and the acceptance of it, I like to think in part is due to such bloggers such as Angel, or AKA Mac Daddy, if you will, because they're coming out and creating a new culture of acceptance for gender fluidity, a term that when I was a child did not exist. But we have a whole series of spirits that have been on this earth, perhaps repressing, hiding, but exist. And now our culture is becoming, at least for my generation, much more accepting of those that are different. And that is the word, different from us. I was showing a friend of mine at work some of these slides, and he turned to me and he said, "My stomach hurts. Don't show me that stuff." And I didn't get upset with him like I might have in the past. And I said, well, talk to me. Why does your stomach hurt? And he said, "It disgusts me." And so we had gotten to this long conversation. We got to the bottom of it, that the way he grew up and the constructs, the cognitive constructs in his mind was that this was not acceptable. But it is the world that we live in. The experience of beauty is unique. But we're just skimming the top part of what beauty is, because this is somehow a base level beauty, although it has its purpose. We have experienced beauty in many ways, and society has already come forward and telling us, no, there's something more than what meets the eye. attempting to redefine so much more, beyond gender, beyond race, beyond religion. Of course, I would be remiss and not to mention one of the most well-known icons in the beauty industry to date. Do any of you know who this is? That's probably good. She's a member of the Kardashian family, Kylie Jenner, mother or child to Caitlyn Jenner. But it's important for us to understand why we notice all these changes, because makeup has not just existed. This multi-billion-dollar business has been in existence since back in caveman times, where we were painting our faces, attempting to look different. It's something innate in us, something that is very much represented, well represented in the gospel according to Spiritism. How we are different from the animal kingdom is our incessant, constant desire to be better, to progress. The only problem with that is sometimes we go after it in the wrong way. And I shouldn't say wrong. Let me redact that statement. We go about it in different ways, which take us longer to get to the end point, but still has its value. And that's okay. It's important to know that the experience of beauty is subjective, and that it's relative. If all of us in this room were supermodels, top models, we all had Mercedes-Benz or Audi cars, wouldn't matter if one more person came in here with a, Dolce & Gabbana and shoes and Prada purse. It would make no difference because it's the norm. It's acceptable. But if someone walks through this door, and even if you're able, I don't know if all of us could identify what a Prada purse looks like, and that's okay, it's probably good that you don't, or Louis Vuitton shoes. For those of you who do know what those things are, you would kind of, whoa, that person's rich, wow. Because relatively speaking, it would not be a norm. If someone who was transgendered walked through this door like Angel that I showed with his makeup on his face, you might do a double take. Why? Because it's not the norm of our culture, the social constructs, except it's becoming. So it's important to know that everything is relative. Einstein's theory of relativity is applicable in our spiritual walk. Everything is relative. Right now, we're used to all of us going through hard times, struggles. We know that we're going to have the Hurricane Irmas in this planet, the earthquakes in Mexico, because we have to remember what planet we're living on. Our planet is still going through a transition, and the people who inhabit it. In the book, Planetary Transition, Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, the name's hard to say, he actually shares what was happening when the tsunami happened back in 2004, that there were these spirits that came and they were organizing themselves to do a huge amount of work and helping the spirits that had discarnated. And that Jesus had allowed spirits from faraway galaxies to come to help and assist in our planet. And what was interesting was that Manuel was trying to share, as he was interviewing these beings, what it was like on these planets. And all he said he could muster up to say was that there are experiences and emotions that they're able to feel that we can't even conceptualize. We can't even think about yet. We can't even feel those things yet. So it's something for us to think about when we think about beauty, because beauty, albeit physical thus far we've shown you, also has a component of connecting us to the divine. Clive Bell, one of the most notable art critics, probably to date, is pretty famous in the world of aesthetics. He says that we have no other means of recognizing a work of art other than our feeling for it. Again, going back to the heart and it being a subjective experience for us. But aside from being a subjective experience, neurobiology has shown us, yes, there are areas in our brain that when we experience beauty and we declare this thing is ugly, this thing is beautiful, there are parts in our brain that light up. And I'm going to talk about also how that correlates with, in the book, In the Greater World. But first, science. Science in a particular research that was done by Samir, I have my glasses on. Yes, thank you. Professor Zeki, Dr. Zeki, you can Google him and his research is here. He's a neurobiologist and studies aesthetics, which does not attempt to define what beauty is, but wishes to see how the human brain reacts to beauty, how we experience beauty through our sensory perception. And the research that they found basically is this, that when we declare something to be ugly or severely ugly, in the amygdala, which is the part in our brain, as well as in the motor cortex, lights up. And the more you declare something to be beautiful, whether it's visually or musically, the medial orbital frontal cortex lights up. And this is significant, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But you can just see here some brain scans of the area. This is the emotional brain. And what's really interesting, the latest research that's coming out of neurobiology and neuroscience says that the neuroscience of aesthetics suggests that the experience of visual, musical, and moral beauty all recruit the same part of the emotional brain, which is here. And this is just if you're curious in the specific area in the brain for those of you that are healthcare professionals. So it's interesting for us to know that there is a point that's represented in our physical brain. Of course, the brain, then there's the mind. So let's not confuse the two of those things. But it's interesting and it's good for us to note which science is proving to us. Why? Because in the book, In the Greater World, the mentors bring to us 3 parts of our brain. The primitive brain, which is where we store all of our experiences. The motor cortex, which we referred to a little bit here, which is the essential manifestations in the current evolutionary instant of our way of being. And most importantly, the frontal lobe, which is the noblest part of our evolving divine organism. And they say that there are aspects that we are still not accessing in science. So science is telling us, yes, this area, part of our frontal cortex, that when we're experiencing beauty, it lights up. And the mentors are sharing with us in the greater world that yes, that area in the brain has a very important role to play when we are connecting through beauty to God. In the book, Spiritism and Art, that's not yet in English, by Leon Denis, has some really good insight into how we are experiencing beauty and art. And he says that art is the search, the study, and the manifestation of beauty, which is a divine attribute. So here we are going into understanding a much more deeper understanding of what beauty is and not just aesthetics. That there is a component of us experiencing beauty and a component that we must go through. Joanna DeAndres often says we cannot go from A to Z. You have to go through all the other letters of the alphabet. Much like we have to experience everything else, certain things in our lives. We don't just jump to sainthood. But understanding and experiencing what beauty is will soon lead us to understand the deeper meaning of beauty. If we never stop to appreciate the things that are around us, the small little beauties of life, how can we reach a more profound level? I'll give you an example. It's not my example. Givaldo Franco was giving a talk in a distant land, and he was sharing that the person who was in charge of picking him up and driving him to the location, they were driving down this long road, and it was full of some sort of flowers, let's call them tulips, and they were driving, and Givaldo thought they were beautiful. So he asked his friend, "Hey, can you stop? I want to smell the flowers." And his friend's like, "Okay, weirdo." Pulls off on the side of the road. Givaldo gets out, and he starts admiring the flowers. just stopping to smell the roses, literally. And then his driver kind of was like, felt uncomfortable because he began to realize, and he said, Givaldo, I've been living in this place my whole life. I've passed by these tulips my whole life. I've never stopped to appreciate them. And the beauty that they perfume the air with, and the scenery, the beauty that they bring to the scenery. That in part is having gratitude for life, to have the ability to have your olfactory sense, which is your sense to be able to smell. I've met patients that have lost their olfactory sense. I mean, can you imagine never being able to smell? That has its advantages if you think about it, but also its disadvantages. Never being able to pick something up and smell it. Part of enjoying food is the smell of it all. When I walked into Sylvia and John's house recently, or this weekend, and the smell of the food was overwhelming and made me filled me with joy. I can't find my words. It's an experience of beauty that we should be grateful for all the ways that we can experience our sensory perception. When you close your eyes and I asked you to take in deep breaths, did you hear noise in the background? Did you feel things? Those are all blessings. And by the way, Alex Gray, who our dear friend Andre Moreda was bringing this to our attention, this artist is absolutely amazing. You can find him on alexgray.com. His art is deeply spiritual, deeply. As you can see in this painting. In the book, Spiritism and Art, Leon Denis says the following, that the essential purpose of art is the search and realization of beauty, and is at the same time the search for God. Because God is the perfect primary source of physical and moral beauty. How do we experience that? How do we experience that? How do we experience God as a source of physical and moral beauty? It's good for us to think about that. The more we think about that, perhaps it'll lead us to certain actions, to getting closer to this divine creator, utilizing art through the experience of beauty to elevate us, to experiencing life at a more deeper, profound level. I witnessed a child, it was probably at that age, maybe they were like a teenager already, that had some form of muscular dystrophy, and that one of the forms of enjoyment for him was painting. And the little movement he had with his arm, his mother would lay him down and he would just paint on his side. Always happy, she said, always. And most happy when he could create works of art. To truly be able to understand physical and moral beauty kind of touches on what Susanna talked about. Being able to experience life without resisting what life is trying so hard to teach us. I didn't need my makeup bag, but I wanted it. It was my cane. It's my experience and mine alone. As Susanna shared her experiences. And being able to be vulnerable, to put ourselves out there on the line and say, hey world, this is me. I'm trying to accept who I am, is beautiful. Because it takes courage. being able to accept all that comes and goes in and out of our lives is moral beauty. If you've ever noticed anyone that's gone through anything very difficult and come out of it, it's beautiful, isn't it? It's wow. It's amazing. I interviewed a woman once, an old patient of mine many years ago, and she had been raped. And it had been my first experience with a patient who had been raped. And I was very uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable, imagine, selfish. But I was very uncomfortable professionally. And I went in, I did my assessments with her, and I was trying to pray and think, what do I say? And I felt I was fumbling over everything I was saying to her. And I think she could tell somehow, telepathically, that I was uncomfortable. So she motioned to me as I was kind of walking out of the room. She said, oh, no, come back real quick. Here, sit on my bed. She said, oh, how are you doing? I noticed that you're rushing around. It's busy, right? And I said, yeah, it's a busy night. Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm thinking, this whole conversation I'm having with her, I'm having an equally as disturbing conversation in my mind with myself. Hating myself for not having the ability to be greater than what I was in that moment to comfort her. But she taught me a lesson in that moment, that the beauty of overcoming something and not pegging yourself as a victim, but a student before the law. I was hoping that no one had seen me in that way, afraid for being judged for not being great enough. But here I was thinking, here's this woman who just went through a horrific experience the day prior, older woman, and she said, you know, honey, life has brought me so many things. This is just another thing that I'm going to overcome, learn from, and move on. And I said, well, who am I? I'm just, I should never give another lecture anywhere. But that is life. Life is continuously teaching us things, and we should go with it and flow with it wherever it takes us. And Leon Denis goes on and tells us, on our earth, the artists do not inspire themselves in superior beauty. Most of them imitate what they call, quote, nature, without realizing that it is only one aspect of the divine. So there is much more for us still to connect with on a deeper level. And before you think to yourself, well, I don't paint, I don't sing, I don't create. You do. Every person sitting in this room creates. Whether it's you're sitting down with your spouse, creating new ways to have fun together, or creating a way for yourself to do something enjoyable, you're creating. We are co-creators. You are writing your script, and you are living it. It's important for us to know that the narrative that we share on a day-to-day basis will be the life that we live out, will be the experience of beauty in our lives. I have a not-so-great story of a patient I had, aesthetically beautiful, gorgeous woman, absolutely. She didn't seem to think so. It's my personal opinion. Had 5 beautiful children, all looked like they belong in a magazine. In fact, they looked like they probably walked out of a magazine and onto the floor beside me. But her narrative of her life, and she had endured a lot, was nothing but negative, nothing. And no matter how much I tried to say, well, what about this? And all of her children, by the way, honor students. Graduating, her 2 oldest were graduating high school early, getting scholarships. I mean, and when you meet these children, they're the most eloquent children. Their manners, I just thought, wow, what spirits are these? But no matter how much I tried to talk this woman into viewing life from a different perspective, she could not see the beauty, not even in her own children, without adding her negative perspective on it. Then what did I have to do? I looked for something to explain that situation, and I found the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, Sonder. We all experience life in our own way. And we cannot force anybody else to view life the way in which we view it. Dr. Wayne Dyer says we need to love someone the way that they are and not for what we want them to be, because that's their level. Joanna DeAngelis shares an interesting sort of an analogy. She says, for those of you who have pets, okay, even a fish, you would never look to your cat or dog and say, Fifi, I thought your cat or dog's name, you wouldn't expect Fifi to come and sit at the table with you and put a little, napkin on their chest and cut the knife and fork and have an ongoing conversation with you about, the ups and downs of the stock market and the value of art these days and what our president is doing with this country. You wouldn't expect that, right? Does anybody? Because if you do, let's have a side conversation. But nobody does, right? For those of you who are pet owners, right? No. Okay. Well, I'll have a discussion with her later. Don't worry. But none of us expect that from a cat or a dog or a fish or a guinea pig. So much less should we expect that from someone that is incapable of raising to our level or being aware of what we're aware of. This is one of the most difficult ways in which we are managing our relationships and our experiences in our lives, is the expectation we put on others. And incidentally, sometimes on ourselves, oftentimes on ourselves. So it's important to not judge ourselves, but also not to judge others. Joanna shares with us something in multiple books, actually, not just in existential conflicts, not just in life challenges and solutions, thank you. In her book, The Psychology of Gratitude, she shares a lot of similar ideas, and she says, since the guidelines for behavior lie in thought, thinking correctly is the biggest challenge for anyone who truly desires victory. Layman's terms, it's hard to change our thinking. It's hard to change and think and create mental habits that are positive because our personal narrative oftentimes is very negative. If you would do me a favor and for the next 24 hours, observe the thoughts that you're having and see for yourself what kind of thoughts you have. So she shares, it's important to have positive self-talk, stop and smelling the tulips. These are all creating healthy mental habits. And believe it or not, she actually says how important it is for us to meditate, reflect, and pray daily. Not talking about weekly, monthly, once a year at the Spiritist conference that you go to the day prior just to prepare yourself. Who did that? Come on. Daily. Why? Because the majority of the mental patterns that we have don't just come from this life. They come from many previous ones. Meditation on life. Physical life is temporary, and my life's objectives. It's important for us to set goals for ourselves. We have to have a starting point. When we talk about experiencing beauty, how to get to that point where you're experiencing beauty at a deeper level, we have to begin with a goal in mind. I would like to begin to appreciate, have more gratitude for life. But obviously maintaining balance in all things. She shares with us in Psychology of Gratitude that everything in nature that is beautiful, noble, fertile, and aesthetic constitutes its own gratitude for being a part of the spectacle of life. Everything in nature that's good and beautiful is a part of life. So we should use these experiences to find beauty and be grateful for those things. Be grateful for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Oftentimes we might look at people on TV, and I was reading a research done by the company called Dove a while ago. And one of the things that they found is less than 4% of women consider themselves beautiful. An overwhelming 40 to 50% find themselves average, okay. The only country that they surveyed, and they surveyed about 6 countries that found women that found themselves or called themselves beautiful, one guess. Brazil. It was the only country. And they interviewed Japan, US, Brazil, and several other countries, but it's the only country that they found that women had viewed themselves as beautiful. Now, whether that is related to culture, or the social constructs, or maybe they interviewed Giselle and didn't know it, who knows? But it's possible. But I wanted to leave you with something, an experience. When you look at something, don't just look at it for what you originally thought it was, but go deeper on who that immoral spirit could be. The amazing things that this spirit is going to do with their lives, and not judge things for face value. Because behind every smile, every beard, or lack thereof, is an immortal spirit that has a history, has a purpose, has a goal in life, and is destined to experience beauty at a much more profound level, beyond what the social constructs of our societies tell us what they are. Because beauty is subjective, but we are destined to experience beauty at a much more profound level. And that eventually that level will reach the heights of a man that we know of, but are still getting to know his attributes. The Christ-like consciousness that we hope to understand and see the beauty that he saw at the woman at the well, and the beauty that he saw the scorned woman that was attempted to be stoned to death for being an adulteress, and the beauty that he saw in the thieves on the cross with him, because he saw beauty in them. He saw purpose and value. And I hope we all seek to attain that same thing. Thank you very much.